Rob Thomson, Dave Dombrowski, and the Phillies have cleared the air on Alec Bohm, Bryson Stott, and some future direction the Phillies are headed. Plus, we've got moves that have been made. Max Fried, Nathan Eovaldi, and other names and trades that have happened in the last 24 hours. All that and more coming up today on PHLY Phillies podcast. The Phillies have cleared the air. Alec Bohm is not being shopped. He's not going anywhere, according to Rob Thomson. We also have some updates on Bryson Stott. We also have some updates from around the league. Welcome to PHLY Phillies podcast. Excited to be with you on this midday hump day. Happy Wednesday. Renee Washington here and Tyler Zulli joining you on this gloomy, rainy Wednesday. Winter meetings down in Dallas, Texas are wrapping up. We've got the Rule 5 draft taking place today at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Our very own Pat Egan actually put out a great piece of just going down memory lane of past Rule 5 drafts. We've also got Jim Salisbury, boots to the ground. He's down there working hard right now, so he won't be joining us today, but we'll give us some updates live on the show. Tomorrow is the plan. Plus, he's continuing to drop articles. And we're just following, Tyler, all the excitement and all the craziness going on around Major League Baseball right now. We'll get into Max Fried's historic deal, Nathan Eovaldi, the latest on Roki Sasaki, plus some other names to keep an eye on. Corbin Burnes, we're looking at you. So I see in the chat we've already got some conversation going. But the big topic today, Tyler, is Alec Bohm. How many times have you said, even on this show, and in general in conversation, that we've talked through some potential trades involving Alec Bohm? The Phillies are ready to move on from him. I say that in air quotes for those on podcast platforms. How he's the piece that you can shop because his trade value has increased and he's someone that other teams might be interested in. Well, Rob Thomson came clear on Tuesday, had a chance to speak with reporters. Again, Jim was in the house, and he had a lot of questions thrown his way. And of course, Alec Bohm came up, and he said, Rob specifically stated, I talked to him on the phone yesterday. He said that Alec Bohm's actually in Houston working out, and he also said how Bohm's in good shape. He's already hitting. And clearly said, guys, for the record, this is on the record, I just wanted to let him know we're not, when asked about shopping him, this guy is a really good player. We're not shopping him, but because he's a good player, there's a whole lot of interest in him from other teams. Obviously, you have to do your homework and talk to people and listen. So he cleared the air that they're not actively shopping him, but he also did say in that, Tyler, people are asking about Alec Bohm and they're doing their homework. They are listening. Technically, that has me curious. Let's hear from Rob himself. I know we have the actual audio. Let's hear, because it's good to hear his tone. I mean, Rob's tone's always the same. His facial expressions are always the same. But, I'm not doing my best Rob Thomson impression right now. Let's hear what Rob Thomson actually said, specifically, verbatim, about Alec Bohm.
Kyle Schwarbers, the Trey Turners, the Bryce Harpers. When you look at someone like Alec Bohm, Topper, how would you evaluate his game?
Geez, he's really improved so much. And I know the rumors are flying all over the place. We're not shopping him, but people are approaching us on him, so you got to listen. But this guy's improved so much, not just physically, but mentally over the course of the year, the 3-4 years he's been in the big league. Bobby Dickerson, who Buck knows very well, has done an unbelievable job with Alec, getting be better defensively. Throwing accuracy, glove action. He's really a good hitter because he does the things that I was talking about not chasing. He does get good pitches to hit. He uses the entire field. He makes contact. That's why he's so good hitting behind Harper, because he's going to put the ball in play with runners in scoring position. He's not going to strike out. You can pretty much book an RBI if Alec is at the plate with less than 2 outs and runner in scoring.
Okay. So Rob Tyler, he did come out and say he was wanting to ease Alec Bohm's mind, by speaking to him over the phone. They have been texting, of course, but wanting to talk to him over the phone just to clear the air, to make sure to, bring him some ease, that they're not shopping him. But it is evident teams are interested in him. So this doesn't mean that an Alec Bohm trade will not happen. This just means the Phillies aren't the one initiating conversations to this extent of them. They haven't moved on. Like the whole narrative, and he even talked about it later on, this narrative that Alec Bohm is emotional and they're done with him is inaccurate. So it does kind of clear the air in a way, but also reminds us that there still is potential, just very small potential, because it would have to take a deal that they actively are very interested in.
Yeah, I think if the right move comes along, they'll make the move and do some semblance of a deal. But we've talked about it plenty, and John and I talked about it this morning. Like the match has to be one that fits for the Phillies, not just for a long-term portion of success, but for this season coming up. They are a team that is going to compete for 90, 95 wins, a potential division title, a potential wild card spot, a playoff berth. They're going to be in the mix. And whether you believe that they're better than the Braves or better than the Mets, I think that they are going to be in the playoff conversation for the entirety of the year. And to do that, you need somebody at third base that is major league ready, is not only major league ready, but is going to be productive. So the Venn diagram, the overlap of the Venn diagram, which is fits the Phillies' needs, plus is willing to take on Alec Bohm in the construct of the team that the other team has together, is a small overlap. And then I think there's a third portion of it that says helps the Phillies, right now too. Like we've talked about Seattle, right? Seattle makes sense because Josh Rojas struggled. Their offense as a whole struggled last year to get going consistently, other than Cal Raleigh's 34 home runs and Julio Rodriguez the second half of the season. But it would make a ton of sense for an Alec Bohm to go play for Seattle. It's a team that's looking to win. They're really kind of monetarily capped by what their ownership group is willing to spend. But are they willing to move the arms that would make that trade, that would facilitate that trade? Are they willing to move a Bryce Miller, a Brian Wu, a George Kirby? I think Logan Gilbert's definitively off the table.
Yeah.
But are they willing to move one of those other three guys? Because I don't think the Phillies in exchange are going to look to take on Luis Castillo's contract. This is just my thought, by the way. This is not like I don't have reports on this. So Seattle's a really small percentage. We talked about Chicago, right? And say a Suzuki move potentially. But Chicago just acquired Isaac Paredes at the deadline last year. I don't think they're in the mix to move for a third baseman either. Then you talk about a team like the White Sox with Garrett Crochet. The White Sox don't want a 28-year-old major league ready third baseman who's about to get a contract extension in the next 2 years. They want team-friendly, prospect-driven, positional player prospect-driven moves. So Aiden Miller's in that deal. You probably have a deal done. If it's Justin Crawford as the headliner, you probably don't. So the Alec Bohm market, I think, is real, but I think all of that overlap, like in the triple Venn diagram overlap, it's a very, very small selection of teams and selection of players that work for both sides. So, yeah, they're going to listen. And I also think, and we've said this plenty, I also think that the starting third baseman to begin 2025 is going to be Alec Bohm.
Yeah, you have made that very clear that that's what you're expecting and anticipating for the Phillies, and it does make sense. I mean, we've talked so many times at length. The third baseman options in general are very limited. So whoever you were to bring in is most likely going to be a step backwards, which in all actuality is obviously not help the team. So yeah, it did make sense if you were going to be able to trade him and bring in a starting pitcher, an outfielder. Right, a left fielder specifically. But if you're not able to do that, you're not trading him just for the sake of trading him.
Correct.
And I know in the chat, I agree with you, Andrew, you're mentioning Alec is not getting moved. It does seem as though it's not going to happen unless, as we said, a really strong trade comes along. But I do want to hit on something that was mentioned in the chat. John Peace and Pat Ryan, I know you guys are talking about the growth, his mentality, the maturity. Don't worry, Rob, of course, talked about that a little bit more at length as well. And this is actually what he was saying. He was saying, I don't know where it comes from. When asked about Alec Bohm's perceived immaturity, he said, I don't know where that comes from. He is an emotional guy. He cares a great deal. So he shows emotion, but he's not the only one on the club that shows emotion and slams a helmet or a bat every once in a while. So he kind of was saying he's not immature. That's not the issue. And we did see, of course, Alec Bohm benched in the NLDS, and we wondered where that came from. We did see the tantrums, the outbursts that he showed, I should say, not tantrums. But I never have a problem with emotion. I want you to, if you mess up, if you're striking out, don't smile back the dugout. Like, I'm fine with you being upset when you're not playing well. It's the immaturity of how do you work through that? I think that next level veteran experience type of player has a little bit better grasp and small, because even Bryce Harper, everybody goes through slumps, a little bit better grasp of what's needed to get through those slumps. And I think that's the aspect Alec Bohm still obviously has to refine in his game. We saw him take such major strides in his third base play, as well as overall his at-bats, being a great doubles hitter, a guy that's driving runners in. I think that next evolution is him being able to work through the slumps in a better way. So it does feel immature, but it also, to me, is just a sign that he is still young. He still has some growing to do. And it's not something, more importantly, that the Phillies would trade him because of. Like, I think that was the narrative that we kept hearing, was he's immature. He's not a, quote, good clubhouse guy, and the Phillies would be interested in shopping him because he also has increased trade value. Those things are not true. There are teams interested in Alec Bohm, which makes sense. They should be. They should be interested in him, Ranger Suarez, Bryson Stott, whoever they want to talk, Andrew Painter, whoever they want to talk and inquire about. That doesn't mean the Phillies are going to be open to moving on from them. There is a difference there.
Yeah, and I think the difference is the fact that this is a competitive baseball team. Like, if this were a team that was in the midst of a rebuild, they probably would have made a deal already because they would have acquired prospects back. If this was a team that knew it was on the descent, and, I think the descent is probably a relative term. People are going to say, well, they went to the World Series and then the NLCS and then the NLDS. Is that a descent? It is, in terms of productivity at the end of the season. But this is still a team that believes and functions as it should be a playoff team. And it should do that because it's got high payroll guys. It's got guys that have played on big stages. And I think that this team should be expected to compete in 2025. Even if you don't believe they're better than the Braves or the Mets or San Diego or LA, whichever teams you don't believe they're better than, I think they are still one of the 6 best teams in the National League heading into 2025, even if maybe it is 5 or 6 compared to 3 or 4 like it was a season ago. If they're in a spot now where they're not going to give up productivity, especially from a guy who we've talked about plenty about his contract situation. Yeah. The arbitration numbers are good. He's probably, and I said to John this morning, I think he probably wins his arbitration case, which means he's going to probably get an extra 800,000.
Could be. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean,
money's not real anymore.
The contracts that are be given out in the last couple of weeks. Probably another 800,000 to $1 million he'll win in the arbitration settlement. And you're still looking at a guy who's probably going to be your third baseman for $9-ish million, maybe 10. And then next year he's probably going to get 15 or 16. So you're talking about a guy who's probably going to get over the next 2 seasons about $22 to $25 million to be a productive everyday player. I'm not sure you find many productive everyday third basemen for $12.5 million a season, especially seeing how inactive or limited the free agent pool is this year. Alex Bregman's going to get the bag. Nolan Arenado, the trade conversations never made a ton of sense to me because of the declining numbers plus the money that he's owed over the next couple of years. I think that there's a lot of tangible merit for the Phillies to not be actively shopping this guy while also listening to ideas. Like, if a team calls and blows them away, they're going to move them.
Yeah.
But if a team calls and blows you away about any player, they're going to move you. Like, if somebody were to say, hey, we want Nick Castellanos, who I don't believe is on the trade block, I don't believe was ever on the trade block. If somebody says, hey, we want Nick Castellanos and we're willing to give you a premier left fielder in exchange or a premier starting pitcher in exchange, the Phillies would consider it because that's just how negotiations work.
That's a good point.
I think that they're going to listen. I just don't think they're going to budge off of what they're asking for very easily.
And I think the key for the Phillies is exactly as we've talked about. I see you guys in the chat talking about even the playoffs last year. This is a playoff team. They're not in a rebuild or desperation mode. They don't have to just jump at any deal just because it was floated their way. They absolutely had the ability to say no. They have the ability to say, nope, this player does not fit we as a team, for the Phillies, they know that next step is for them. It's to, as you guys are talking about, not have Red October last only 5 days, be able to have the ability that even if you are, regardless of what happens in the regular season, you're ready come playoff time. I know in the chat, I'm seeing John Peacer mentioning how brutal the collapse was last year, and beyond the bank, you're talking about the emotion. Joe Tiz is talking about the different players that were non-existent. I also saw, was it Timbuktu? If you can scroll up a little bit, my apologies. Timbuktu is talking about, while the others move on from it seemingly quickly, it's the mental stuff that Alec Bohm doesn't move on from quickly. So yes, Alec Bohm specifically, there are areas that are frustrating, especially the timing of his slump last year, the fact that he was one of those players come playoff time that was giving you absolutely nothing. And on the other side, there are very few that actually gave you good productivity in those 5 days of the NLDS and the very short time. But overall, he wasn't the only one. Bryson Stott's name was brought up, and we do have actually an update on Bryson Stott that we found out from his 2024 season. And we do have a Garrett Crochet update as well, because there's some news around Garrett Crochet. Nothing's official. I will always say, nothing is official until there is pen to paper and we hear the breaking news about a deal. But we got some Garrett Crochet news to share with you. But first, let's take
real quickly. By the way,
Oh.
I apologize. I just want to point this out because Manny Production says this. Probably poor choice of words to say never trying to move him. I do think they were looking to. I'm talking more specifically about this offseason. Probably a poor choice of words to say never.
There was a time that Nick Castellanos was a big trade piece for the Phillies, and they were trying to move on from him. The contract, just overall looking to see if they can make a trade for him. It did not happen. And thankfully it did not happen, because look at the season we got from him in 2024. And maybe that's what Alec Bohm's going to be in 2025. That despite all these rumors about him being traded while he's in Houston working out, he stays, and next season will be even better for Alec Bohm, which a better version of Alec Bohm in 2025 would be very exciting to see. So hopefully we get a better version of him and some others, because we do have some updates that we'll have to share with you after this quick break.
Yeah, and let me tell you about our friends over at Miller Lite, because 50 years, Renee, is a long, long time, and that's what Miller Lite's coming up on. They were founded in 1975, and I don't know if you know this, but since 1975, 2025, we're only a couple weeks away from the 50-year anniversary of Miller Lite, but Miller Lite has not changed in those 50 years. They offer you incredible quality, excellent taste, and just 96 calories. It's less filling than your heavier beers. Listen, I understand that it's the holiday season, but if you're looking for something that everybody can enjoy, everybody has a different taste in beer. Everybody has a different taste in drink. And if you're looking for something that everybody can enjoy, Miller Lite is the way to go for your holiday parties, your Christmas moments, your festive moments. If you're looking for something for everybody, Miller Lite is that way to go, because Miller Lite keeps it simple. It's undebatable quality. It's great taste. And as I said, only 96 calories, because it's the beer that strips away everything that you don't need and holds on to what matters most. Sometimes you just want a beer that tastes like a beer. You don't have to choose what's best. Miller Lite has great taste and is less filling, and it tastes like Miller time. So to get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/PHLY Phillies, or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories per 12 ounces. Fewer calories and carbs than premium regular beer.
Yes, and also let me tell you about our friends over at Empire Today, the place you can go to make sure to get some great quality flooring. It's difficult, it's overwhelming, and there are a lot of choices when it comes to buying any sort of flooring for your home. Carpets, hardwood, tiles, whatever it is you're looking to purchase, it's a lot. And with Empire Today, they focus on a few keys as their mission, as their values. They want to give you the shop-at-home convenience. They want to provide you with the right product for your needs, as well as quick and professional installation and a price match guarantee. Now, Empire Today, with their shop-at-home convenience, provides you a chance that as you're sitting in the room of your house, you can snap a picture of any room and be able to see what that flooring would look like in your space. It's the virtual floor designer that they have that allows you to be able to shop from home. I don't know about you guys, but when you're at the store sometimes, it's hard to imagine and envision what something will look like in your house. You have an idea of how does it fit, how does it match with the different furniture you have, and the paint, and the lighting, and the backsplashes, and everything else in your home. Well, you don't have to worry about imagining, because with the virtual floor designer, you can see for yourself. And so it just gives you the convenience of being able to shop from home. versus feeling overwhelmed in the store. Not to mention, Empire Today also just provides you with the support that you need to make sure that as they pride themselves on, they're giving you great customer support and helping find what works for your budget and for your home. So now when you are buying flooring, you have the convenience, but they also have other perks and benefits, such as being able to schedule a free in-home estimate today. That's right. On this dreary, gloomy Wednesday, you yourself can take advantage of scheduling a free in-home estimate. And then also, all listeners get a chance to receive a $350 discount when you use the promo code PHLY. There are some restrictions that do apply, but check out empiretoday.com/PHLY for more details. All right, so as we're tuned in here on PHLY Phillies podcast, Jamie Lynch is on vacation, and it actually, although it's warm today, I will say, great time to be in the islands, great time to be on the beach. Happy for him. So Tyler and I, we've got updates for you though, because there has been more.
We're not on the beach.
We're not on the beach.
We're just sitting here.
In my head, I'm on the beach. Actually,
I don't know. Behind me, it looks like 28 days later is happening. The fog rolled in yesterday, and it hasn't stopped.
It was so foggy yesterday. But when you have a stretch like this of winter meetings where we're just kind of waiting, we're getting updates, we've got things going on in terms of trades and deals, but we also have chances to be able to hear for the first time from Rob Thomson, from Dave Dombrowski, and it's been a while since we've been able to hear from them. And first of all, I love the fact that I meant to comment on this earlier. We got a chance to see Rob. He's back rocking the vest, the comb over Rob. That's a whole different Rob Thomson for you than the usual dugout Rob we get. But also what came out from the conversations around the winter meetings is an update on Bryson Stott. Scott.
Scott's Tots. Michael Scott, The Office.
Sky is in my head. Sorry, apologies. Bryson Stott. We have an update on Bryson Stott.
This would be the point where Jamie would say something like, make a Scotty doesn't know reference and then go to something else, and then we'd go down a rabbit hole for 15 minutes.
In my defense, I was typing something while I was speaking, and so I don't know if you guys have ever morphed the two, like while you're typing one thing, you are saying something else, so my apologies, because words are hard sometimes.
Yeah, Tanner Scott and Bryson Stott, when they're teammates next year, it'll be a mess.
Scotty to Stotty. All right, let's talk about an update around Bryson Stott, because we did get some news from him from 2024 that actually makes sense. And originally when I heard this, I was like, okay. And then the deeper I got into reading, I was like, oh, this makes complete sense. So here's the latest around Bryson Stott that we found out from 2024. Now, Dave Dombrowski did tell our very own Jim Salisbury, love that Jim is down there getting all the updates, that Bryson Stott was dealing with a sore elbow for most of 2024. And he also said, according to Dave Dombrowski, that the elbow issue did impact Bryson Stott's ability to drive the ball. And him and Rob also told Jim that they expect Bryson to improve offensively in 2025. Now, as we know, and I know you guys mentioned in the chat, Bryson Stott was one of the guys that down the stretch you could not count on. You know, when you look at the NLDS specifically, but even those final months of the season, we saw a struggling Bryson Stott. And we even wondered and saw him at times actually get platooned. Him and Edmundo Sosa were splitting some time. We wondered if maybe his role was too big for him. He wasn't ready to be an everyday second baseman. We did see him so up and down, and the inability to drive the ball. His average exit velocity was 87 miles per hour, and it was the previous two seasons around 88.1 miles per hour in 2022 and 2023. His hard hit rate dropped. His exit velo dropped. His hard hit rate was at a career low, 30.8% in 2024. So now hearing he was dealing with a sore elbow, it makes me a little bit more understanding of what was going on. But I raised that point with a question, Tyler. If Bryson Stott was dealing with a sore elbow, which maybe could not heal quickly enough, there was, sometimes there are those injuries that you just need an offseason to heal, and I get that. Seeing how he was struggling with his exit velo, his hard hit rate, would you have scaled him back even more? I mean, I don't think an IL stint was necessary, but now I'm wondering kind of if you're Dave and Rob and you know Bryson Stott's dealing with a sore elbow, he's struggling. He's not Bryce Harper. He's not a guy that you can trust. Like Bryce was dealing with an injury as well. You kept him out there because you know you can still get something out of Bryce Harper. He can battle through it. Bryson Stott is not Bryce Harper in that same vein. Now I'm kind of wondering, well, then why did we keep going to him so much?
So
it actually makes me ask a few more questions around him being in the lineup as much if he was openly dealing with a sore elbow.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you one of those questions that as a former sports talk radio host, I used to hate because it it didn't breed conversation
There's no answer
at
to this,
all.
But
My question is, what's the alternative? And I hate
Edmundo Sosa.
But you saw in spurts down the stretch, Edmundo Sosa was not good in the second half of the season. He was excellent when he filled in for Trey Turner.
I raise you, if you go with Edmundo Sosa, other than
right
him,
off of him playing from Trey Turner, maybe you have a continuation. But like you saw in the second half of the year,
just to give Stott a chance to rest and get
sure,
healthier. So maybe in those initial games from Sosa, you're not giving great productivity. Although I thought he was fine at stretches. You at least would be able to give Bryson Stott time to rest, which now when Stott comes back and he's healthier, maybe you do get a bump in his hard hit rate and his exit velocity. So I think short term, it might not be great for results, but long term, you might have had a healthier Bryson Stott come September and definitely maybe even October.
So I think that it comes down to like Sosa's numbers were plummeting towards the end of the season, and I just don't think exposing him to becoming an everyday player again would have just made it worse. His whiff rates were going through the roof. His strikeout rates were raising, month by month. The month and a half that he gave the Phillies in the spell of Trey Turner was more than any of us could have asked for. You and I talked about it back in May or June. We did a show where what Edmundo Sosa was doing was allowing the Phillies to bring Trey Turner back at a pace that was acceptable for both him and for the team. But I think that, towards the end of the season, Sosa was not particularly good. Now, Stott wasn't good either offensively, but I think they were limited in the value that they were going to get from Edmundo Sosa or from more appearances and more plate appearances from Cody Clemens or Weston Wilson shifting over to play some second base or whatever the combination of players was going to be. I just don't think the value was there, especially knowing the fact that even despite the fact that offensively Bryson Stott was not very strong last year, his defense was still there. He still was a Gold Glove caliber defender.
Yeah.
He wasn't as good as he was 2 years ago. Like 2 years ago, there was legitimate merit for him to win the Gold Glove at second base. Last year, he was nominated. Now, nobody on the planet was going to beat Bryce Turang, but, he ended up winning the Platinum Glove in the National League. But, I think that the defensive metrics were there. The base running metrics were there to keep him in the lineup, even with the offensive struggles, especially when there was a right-handed pitcher on the mound. You talked about like the exit velocity, the hard hit percentage, the barrel rates. They were all low, and they were. One of the things that we've talked about plenty is his bat speed. He was in the 7th percentile in bat speed last year. He's even with a healthy elbow in 2023, which was a much better year for him. His bat speed, while not like calculable, like at least on the Baseball Savants metrics, because they just really started it this year, you could see his bat drags through the zone. He's long to the zone when you want to be long through the zone. His bat drags to the zone a little bit more than you would like. And his rookie year, he chased a lot of high fastballs. And his sophomore season last year, you could tell he was laying off that stuff. And it's why he was so productive with 2 strikes, because he was forcing pitchers, even with 2 strikes, to either throw something in the zone, or he was able to use his bat-to-ball skills to kind of flick something into the outfield or drive it down the line when it was a breaking ball down in the zone. He excels with pitches down in the zone. He does not excel with pitches up in the zone, and that's in part because his bat speed's in the 7th percentile.
Yeah.
When you're not hitting the ball hard and your bat speed lags, guys are just going to take you up the zone. Yeah. And you saw it, especially in the second half of the season. He was swinging and missing a lot at pitches up in the zone. He was swinging and popping up a lot at pitches up in the zone. And I think it had to do in part because of the elbow, but it also had to do in part because of the bat speed. It's not a quick bat to the zone. I don't know if it ever gets any more than the 7th percentile. If he gets it into like the 15, 18, 20 range, I think you've got a vastly different hitter because guys won't be able to challenge him the same. But I think that, the injury paired with the fact that his bat is it's long to the zone, I think played a big part in his lack of success this year.
Yeah, and I know in the chat you guys are mentioning the depth question that comes up because of this, as Timbuktu and different people in the chat are mentioning. It does make you question also the overall depth that the Phillies did have to lean a lot on Bryson Stott, especially when Trey Turner was injured, and you had Stott and Sosa splitting between second base and shortstop. They were your two guys that you had to lean on every day, and even that may have been something that caused a bit of overuse for Stott. But then on the other hand, April was not a good month for him, as his splits were 200, 290, 350 in the month of April. And then he actually took a step up and was batting in May, which is around the time, of course, Trey Turner went down like May 3rd, 265, 379, 398, and was kind of around that spot for a few months and then dipped as you got into August. And then September July was better. August was a dip again. So he was up and down between, the 220s and then like 260s for his batting average alone. But in honesty, his overall hits, his overall numbers were kind of consistent throughout the season. So when we use inconsistent, I do remember stretches where he had, a couple home runs in back-to-back games, a couple big hits, some RBIs he was driving in. But overall for the season was a regression. And I don't know when the elbow injury happened exactly. That's the part we don't have clarity on, to be completely honest. It could have happened early. It could have happened late. Who knows? It could have disappeared at times and came back. We don't know the extent of what the injury was and how much. I get the vibe it was an overuse injury, but we do know overall for Bryson Stott in 2024, as you mentioned, batting 220 against fastballs, slugging 350 against them. Also, something that we rely on for him was his patience at the plate, being able to work the counts, being able to drive the ball into gaps and find, pockets to spray the ball into, giving good contact at a high rate. Those are the things you need from him. Defensively, I thought, as you mentioned, he was what you expected for the most part. Took a step forward absolutely defensively. The offensive side is a concern because I don't know how much the elbow injury really was a factor, because when you look at the entire season, outside of April, which was his worst month, it's kind of on par the rest of the season. So was he hurt early May and it was all year he dealt with this? I don't know. But the questions I get from this are, was he in his own head and then the injury made it even worse? Was there a time that maybe a quick, 5 days off or whatever, or 3 days, whatever the number is, okay, whatever number they come up with, a few days off would have been enough, and you just lean on some other guys and hope they can do enough to bandage it? The depth is a question. There's just more that this brings out. It makes sense, of course, as to why his exit velo and his hard hit rate and, just the struggles he had with fastballs make more sense. But it also comes across as if, he'll just be better next year. And I don't know that's guaranteed. Like them saying a healthy Bryson Stott, he's just going to be better. I'm saying all this to bring it back. I don't know. That's not guaranteed. And I know, Jason, you're saying in all caps, it feels like Dave Dombrowski's just going to run it back with a few signings and try to say guys will be healthier in 2025. And that doesn't automatically equate to better production. Bryson Stott's production all year was pretty on brand from start to finish. Yeah. So whenever that elbow injury happened, you didn't see him being like a 300 hitter and it drop off. He was pretty consistent through 2024 statistically for the most part, some months worse than others. So I was also kind of feeling as though, yes, this makes sense, but it also, I'm not going to say the word excuse. It's just not enough for me. What else are we going to get from Bryson Stott to drastically improve in some of these areas offensively?
Well,
that makes sense.
I think it's fair to ask the question about, like, I don't think there could have been two more polar opposite seasons between 2023 and 2024 because, like,
right now that's the comparison.
The way in which Bryson Stott handled the bat, like we talked about it, especially with two strikes in 2023, made me like bullish that this guy could potentially win, batting title type of seasons. And last year, that season in which I thought he was, he's much better against fastballs. He hit 285 against four-seam fastballs in 2023. Now, he was a -2 run value. Now, run value can be, sometimes misleading because 285 and a 425 slugging against four-seam fastballs, I'm going to take from a guy who doesn't hit for a ton of pop, right? Sure. For a guy who's a 10 to 15 home run hitter, I will certainly take. Last year, he was a -9 on the run value. And as you brought up, like just four seams alone, he was 197 against, pitches considered fastballs in totality. As you said, he was 220. The slugging was sub 350. Now, the one thing that's interesting is, like, we know Bryson Stott doesn't swing and miss a lot. We know Bryson Stott doesn't chase a lot. We know Bryson Stott doesn't strike out a lot. He's really good with 2 strikes. He also squares the ball up at a pretty high rate for a guy who doesn't hit the ball all that hard. And, the squared up percentage versus the barrel percentage is an interesting conversation because he squares the ball up at a 29, almost 30% clip, but he also only barreled less than 4% of his swings last year. So it's an interesting dynamic for a guy who I think probably only needs a little bit of like tweaking with his approach and kind of get a more simplistic approach to the way that he handled 2023.
Yeah.
And can you teach getting the bat more quickly through to the zone and then staying long through the zone? I think that you certainly can. That's where I think the health might come into play. Right. But so that the comparison between last year and this year, my expectation for 2025, and this may be a little bit of a cowardly way out, but my expectation for 2025 is maybe he sits somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
And, maybe he's not the 285, 290 hitter every year that I expected him to be, but I also don't think he's going to be the 245 with a 315 OBP and a sub 360 slug guy like he was last year.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for 20-25 home runs from this guy. It's never going to be the case. If he gets double digits, I think that's plenty for me. But like the double values, he hit 32 doubles in 2023. He hit 19 in 2024. Yeah. In 2023, he had 49 extra base hits. In 2024, he had 32. 17 less extra base hits for a guy who only had 4 less home runs and the same amount of triples. So we're talking about a guy whose gaps power kind of evaporated in 2024. Could that have to do with the elbow? Certainly could.
So was his elbow hurt all season?
No, probably not. I think it was that's where you get back to the conversation.
That's like, when did the elbow get hurt? Was it something you started dealing with in September? Was it something you started dealing with April, that it came in waves? Because sometimes I will say, and I dealt with this myself, you do have those nagging injuries. And actually, I remember Stott made some comments in the course of the season about those nagging injuries you work through that kind of come and go, where there are stretches where you recognize them and they're very painful, and there's some stretches you almost forget and they're gone. Sure. So I'm not sure what's interesting to me, though, and I know you guys in the chat are talking about what the Phillies need to do, what they're going to do. Taiwan Walker's entered the chat and conversation.
Guy catching strays.
I do catching strays all the time. I do think let me try to say this as like without any emotion, so you guys don't think I'm leaning one way or the other. Here's the facts. Juan Soto, the biggest piece, was off the board Sunday. We've seen a number of trades and free agency signings happening across the league in the last few days, including even prior to Juan Soto's move. Dominoes are falling. Max Fried's another big one. Corbin Burnes has been brought up when there's offers, and we'll get into some of the other updates around the league in a moment. All of these moves are happening across the league. The Phillies did do something of their own. We did, and I know you guys had a chance to talk about it. We had the breaking news podcast, and we had a chance to just share as the Phillies did have a chance to make a move of their own with Romano. And now we're getting, in the course of all this winter meeting traction and hot stove updates and rumors, Alec Bohm is not being shopped. Bryson Stott was injured in 2024. He should be better in 2025 when healthy. These are the updates we're getting from the Phillies, which absolutely, in addition to the updates around like a Garrett Crochet and some other names, could make you feel as though the Phillies are going to be running it back and just expect some guys to be healthier and therefore be better, with a couple of small pieces here and there to be enough. That I could see being a very normal and very real response for people. And again, I'm not leaning one way or the other. I'm going to try to stay right in the middle and be Switzerland, because I'm going to keep my poker face and not share how I'm really feeling. But those are the facts.
Isn't that our job?
League,
Isn't that what we get paid to do?
The entire league is making moves, and the Phillies are letting us know Bryson Stott will be healthy and better next season, and Alec Bohm is not being shopped.
So here's the thing. I think a lot of people got really upset at the fact that the Phillies didn't make a play at Juan Soto. And I don't think it was ever realistic that the Phillies were in the Juan Soto conversation, but we talked about, like, would there be that arbitrary offer to be in the mix, right? To have your name get listed on Jeff Passan's tweet that said the Phillies are one of the teams that have offered Juan Soto, even if it was $100 million less than what he ended up signing for. Is that enough for you? Because then the secondary thing is, right? The Phillies signed Jordan Romano the next day, which I think Jordan Romano is a fine bullpen move. I don't think it's the only bullpen move they should make. And in fact, I would still be in play for a high leverage reliever, especially, I know that they're kind of shorthanded, left-handed wise, especially if you don't know what Jose Alvarado is going to be. But I would still go get a power right-handed arm to put in the back end of the bullpen, because you are replacing 2 power right-handed arms. And I don't expect Jeff Hoffman to be back, as much as I've lobbied for that since June. I don't expect it to happen. I think they're going to get outpriced. And I'm not quite sure Carlos Estevez is back either. I think he's going to get a larger contract than what the Phillies are willing to pay. But I do think that fans have a right to say we want more, especially when it comes to that bullpen conversation. But I did find it kind of funny the day after that Juan Soto gets signed. People are like, oh, this is the garbage dumpster fire thrift store buying that Dave Dombrowski's doing. And it's like, guys, the moves don't have to be, parallel to each other, right?
Yeah.
Because first of all, no move was going to be Juan Soto parallel to begin with. And second of all, like, if the Mets sign Juan Soto and then the Phillies sign Jordan Romano, that doesn't exclusively say the Phillies are Jordan Romano shopping. But I do understand that people want more from this team, and they want more from this front office. And so I expect this team to go and get another bullpen arm. I would believe that to be the case. I would not be surprised if this team is going to continue to keep themselves in the Garrett Crochet conversations. And I would not be surprised if this team is going to keep themselves in the Kyle Tucker conversations. Yeah. And what they're willing to move in terms of prospects is going to be the infinite definer on if they acquire any of these players.
Yeah, well, I haven't had a chance to say it on the show, but I do like the Jordan Romano move. With his 2.37 ERA he had and 2 AL All-Star appearances and his 95 games he saved between 2021 and 2023. Hopefully that is the version of a healthy Romano that the Phillies will get. That is one I do hope. I can actually say, if healthy, is a great piece, a 1-year deal, no bad 1-year deals. But you brought up Garrett Crochet, and we do have to get into talking about him after we take this quick break, because we actually do have an update. The Phillies have obviously had their names connected to Garrett Crochet even prior to the trade deadline, and we've got some news about the latest around the Phillies and Garrett Crochet. But first, before we talk about Garrett Crochet, let me tell you about a spot you can go to restore any hair loss that you're dealing with, and that's with Glatt Hair Restoration. Now, Glatt Hair Restoration has partnered with the Morgenstern Center for Orbital and Facial Plastic Surgery to make sure to be able to elevate and provide even better services for their clients. So, with the Glatt Hair Restoration, that is now under the Morgenstern Medical Center, they provide you with some cutting-edge treatments. They have a great approach, great expert team, and they really are focused on, with their state-of-the-art location, providing you with strong results and research-backed results at that. So with Glatt Hair Restoration, they have a variety of different work they do with their leading-edge treatments at all stages of hair loss. Their focuses are on prevention and restoration, and it's things such as laser light therapy, hair restoration surgery, PRP and stem cell restoration, topical and oral medications, vitamin supplementation, and more. And they really just make sure to provide every patient with a complimentary one-on-one consultation to be able to figure out and pinpoint the best course of treatment, and then working with their patients all the way through from that very first phone call to the final follow-up to be supportive and be there for you during a stressful time. Their goal is to make the experience simple and stress-free, because they're not just about restoration. They're also about innovation. They're also about providing breakthrough treatments to dramatically change lives. It's a stressful time in your life when you're dealing with any sort of hair loss and any stage of that hair loss, and they want to be there for you through it. So bald is now optional. That's your hair loss. Sorry, Tyler. Bald is now optional. Bald is beautiful. We love bald. But if you wanted to maybe improve how you look and how you feel about yourself, Glatt Hair has the right treatment for you. You can regain your confidence, and you can check them out by visiting glatthairmctr.com or giving them a call at 610-980-4000 to get started with Glatt Hair Restoration today.
Well, Renee, while I still have my hair, one of the places I get my shampoo is at with our friends over at Rite Aid. But it's not just about products at Rite Aid. Of course, you can get your flu shot at Rite Aid as well, because the CDC recommends that you get your flu shot each and every year, and you don't want to miss out on your holiday season, time with your friends and your family, or especially if you've got little ones in the house, you don't want to get them sick either. So the CDC is recommending that you do get a flu shot every year. because the strands change and flu changes and things they don't exist in the same way that they did a year ago. So flu vaccinations are going to help you. They're going to help your family, and they may reduce a child's risk of severe life-threatening influenza by up to 75%. So help protect your family by getting the flu shot at Rite Aid today. You can schedule an appointment, but you don't have to. You can just walk into your local Rite Aid and get your flu shot. On top of all the other vaccinations that you may be interested or need to get, you can get all of those in accordance with the CDC with our friends over at Rite Aid. State, age, and health restrictions do apply. Ask your Rite Aid pharmacist for more details.
All right. As we are moving along here on PHLY Phillies podcast, and Tyler and I have been sharing the latest around the Phillies, here's the latest around Garrett Crochet, because we're, of course, keeping an eye on him as well as many other names across the market. As we know, Garrett Crochet is one that's been connected to the Phillies since prior to the trade deadline, one that the Phillies were, and we actually advocated to try to acquire, but he had stipulations. He wanted to pitch a certain amount of innings and be a starter and all these postseason specific expectations as well. A deal did not happen. Well, it actually also seems like a deal is not going to happen at all. Because there are reports that the chances of a Garrett Crochet deal have drastically decreased. Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic said that for the Phillies, the club's offer has continuously decreased since the summer, partially because trade would not get the deal done. Now, of course, Garrett Crochet, for the White Sox, their hopes are that they can bring in a slew of prospects in return. And according to these various reports, Bob Nightingale, also included in that, said that the White Sox rejected a package that featured at least Alec Bohm and Justin Crawford. So interesting, as the Phillies were not shopping Alec Bohm. But that's okay. Neither here nor there. There was a trade package that involved Bohm and Crawford, and that was rejected. And then we don't know the official offer from the summer, but we do know that there still has not been an offer that both sides have agreed on. And the overall expectation is that the Phillies are not going to ultimately be able to land Garrett Crochet, even though the Phillies have been viewed as a top contender for him. Again, as I always say, nothing is official until it's official. The Phillies could go out and find a way to lock in Garrett Crochet tonight. But various reports are indicating as of Tuesday that it seems very unlikely for the Phillies to actually be able to figure out a deal, and that, as Rosenthal has said, the chances of getting Crochet have, quote, diminished. So on top of everything, with the high asking price of the White Sox and all the prospects that they're looking for, the Phillies and White Sox have not been able to find a middle ground to make a deal work. And so, guys, moving on. It's not Garrett Crochet. It's time to start looking elsewhere, because he is not going to be the starting pitcher that's added this offseason. Even though as of Monday, Bob Nightingale predicted that the Phillies would trade for him. And by Tuesday, it was reported they most likely are not going to trade for him. So a deal looks like
Bobby,
it's not
that's
going
not
to happen.
Good work by you, buddy.
That's the timeline for you. That's the ups and downs of what we've been having. The reality is the White Sox did ask for Andrew Painter. They've also asked for a number of prospects. The Phillies are not willing to move on from an Andrew Painter. That part we can all agree to. I don't have to be in the room to know the Phillies are not going to move on from Andrew Painter and trade him. We know that. But given their prospect pool in general, it does seem evident that they don't have enough prospects for what the White Sox are asking for. And I don't know, to Andrew's point in the chat, if anyone is going to be able to give the White Sox what they're looking for. They want to rebuild with a lot of prospects.
Sure.
Herb Lawrence talked about it on the show with us as he covers the White Sox with our friends over at CHGO. I don't know if the White Sox can find a deal, but nonetheless, good luck with somewhere else. It's kind of like in the dating game when you have that person with ridiculous asks. And it's not my problem. Move on. Go figure that out somewhere else, because here in Philly, we're good. We would have loved to have Garrett Crochet added to this roster, but if they're asking for too many prospects, not a problem. We'll look elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is going to be a recurring problem across the board until one of these teams budges or the White Sox come off their asking price. The latest latest rumors kind of circulating around one of the teams that was a potential fit is the New York Mets.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if the reports are true or not, but it seems to me that the Mets aren't willing to move off of Jet Williams and Luis Angel Acuna who it appears that may be what the starting point was for the White Sox in exchange for Garrett Crochet. And Colby brings up a good point in the chat. Like, the White Sox they're still going to get a pretty good haul for Garrett Crochet if a move does get facilitated. But now you're talking about a guy who is going to have the half a season less of playoff run for the acquiring team. And my guess would be the acquiring team is one that either has playoff aspirations or has been in the playoffs in the last couple of seasons, like the Mets, like the Braves, like the Phillies, like the Dodgers, the big names that you've talked about for most of last year, or one that has playoff aspirations, such as a Cincinnati that we've talked about in prior conversations as well. But it seems to me that, like, you lose a year of playoff productivity for the teams that would have been interested in July, and you lose a full year of team or a half a year at least of team control for everybody by waiting until the offseason. So the value of Garrett Crochet on the mound is still enormously high. The value of Garrett Crochet to the front office dwindles at the later that you are unwilling to move this guy. It's just the value of contracts and how team control works and all of those stipulations, that go into play. I think the teams are balking at the idea of sending, 2 of their 5 top prospects plus a potential major league player or a third prospect maybe in the 10 to 15 range when I think the rest of the league is feeling the same way. I don't think any team wants to be the one that overpays for this guy.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't be stunned, and this is, again, just my thoughts, wouldn't be stunned if a team facilitates a trade eventually for Garrett Crochet. And I also wouldn't be shocked if if the return is less than what we would have expected potentially in July or potentially in, early November when these conversations began.
Well, they say beggars can't be choosers, but the White Sox are begging and choosing for a lot. But regardless, doesn't seem like a deal is going to happen with Garrett Crochet. We can shift our attention elsewhere. Roki Sasaki is another name that's been brought up in some updates. His agent, Joel Wolf, actually came out and said, I think there's an argument to be made that a smaller mid-market team might be more beneficial for him as a soft landing. The Dodgers have been listed as a team that are making it a, quote, major priority to sign Roki Sasaki. We, of course, have talked about his likelihood of going to a team like the Padres because of his connection and mentorship that he receives from Yu Darvish. Technically, you can get mentorship from across the country. So maybe your mentor is in San Diego, but you're living and playing in Philly, just saying. So Joel Wolf has come out, his agent, saying a smaller market might be a good step for him. I don't think we're not a small market, but we're smaller. We're smaller than, I would say, the Dodgers, and that's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, I think that your mentorship might be in San Diego, and you end up signing in San Diego. And I think Jim brought that up earlier in the week. Like all indications point to the Padres being the front runner. Listen, again, it's one of those things we've talked about plenty, where money is not the object here.
Yeah.
Right? The Dodgers can't bully their way into this conversation because of money. The Mets can't do it. The Phillies can't do it either. Nobody can do it. There's a cap on how much they're able to spend on this guy because of his status and the posting status and things like that, and his professional time spent in Japan. If he waited another year, it would become, a free market for this guy, and however much teams want to spend, that's how much they would have spent.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that the value of wanting to win and the value of being around an organization that has success will be a driving factor for Roki Sasaki. He's, I think he has an elite level pitch. I'll put it that way. He's at least one elite level pitch and a really, really, really good fastball to go along with it.
Definitely.
I think that, to me, it would be strange if he ended with a mid-market team. And I say mid-market, and then the weird thing is I say mid-market, and then the first team that comes out of my mouth is the Cubs. And the Cubs should not be a mid-market team. They should be a large market team. But Jed Hoyer and company have been really weird with their finances as of late, trying to move Cody Bellinger after re-signing him, and trying to move Seiya Suzuki, even though he has a no-trade clause. And, the money in Chicago is kind of weird right now, and I mean, at least with the Cubs. But I don't think any of those teams are out. It's like Jamie and I kind of scoffed at the idea of Tampa Bay. But if the money's not an issue and you want to potentially as you use that phrase, like a soft landing, maybe those teams are still in.
Maybe. Well, just some other things as we are wrapping up to rattle off some updates for you. We did see the news for Max Fried, an 8-year, $218 million deal to the New York Yankees. And with that, he does actually make some history with that deal. That's the largest deal that a left-handed pitcher has received, and the fourth largest deal of any pitcher behind Shohei Ohtani, of course, with the Dodgers, Yoshinobu Yamamoto with the Dodgers, and then Garrett Cole with his deal that he had with the Yankees, that 9-year, $324 million deal. So Max Fried locked in some big money. Of course, the Yankees, after pursuing Juan Soto and falling short, had some money to spend still in the bank. And so they locked in 30-year-old Max Fried, who with the Braves last season was 11-10 with a 3.25 ERA and 29 starts. Max Fried was not the only one off the board, though, yesterday. Nathan Eovaldi also is one that has been locked in, and the Rangers and Nathan Eovaldi have drummed up a contract for a 3-year, $75 million deal for Eovaldi, who was at one point on my fantasy team. But it actually was better than what he was predicted to get. They had him around like a $44 million contract for 2 years. And so instead, inked himself a $75 million deal. And with that, Tyler, some attention now all goes towards Corbin Burnes, because he is still on the market, and he is actually one of the higher touted pitching arms that are available, that are out there. So who's going to get Corbin Burnes? Possibly the Red Sox. That's right. The Red Sox have actually been prepared to make a formal offer to Corbin Burnes, as some reports are mentioning. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we get a Corbin Burnes deal like today, especially now that Max Fried has been off the board and they kind of have a comparison point of what to offer him. So allegedly, the Red Sox are planning to offer Max Fried a deal ASAP.
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
I think he's going to Boston.
Max Fried just got a contract for 8 years and $200 and some odd million at 30 years old. Corbin Burnes is also 30 years old. He's a former Cy Young Award winner. He's won an ERA crown once. He's been an All-Star each of the last 4 years. A 2.92 ERA last year in Baltimore in his 32 starts. And he's one of those guys who just feels like almost quietly goes about his stuff.
Yeah.
Because you just look at him every year and you're like, okay, 2.1, 2.4, 2.9. Oh, man, bad year for Corbin Burnes. Only had a 3.3 and then back to a 2.9 in his only year, what probably is going to be his only year in Baltimore. This guy should, to me, get paid. Like, if I were giving out contracts and you said to me, who are you giving more years and more money to, Corbin Burnes or Max Fried? I'm giving the money to Corbin Burnes.
Yeah, and he actually is predicted to make more than Max Fried because, of course, Major League Baseball, of course, put out their predictions of what they anticipate every free agent would receive. And Corbin Burnes was predicted at receiving a 7-year, $200 million contract, but they had him at a higher price point than Max Fried for their prediction. And so there is a chance that he could get, especially with the 8-year, $218 deal that Fried just got, he could get an 8 or even 9-year deal that's between like $250, $300 is what the numbers are projecting him at. So to your point, Tyler, I know in the chat it was brought up also, he should get. Max Fried just raised the bar for Corbin Burnes, and he's got to be licking his chops like, all right, bet. You got 8 years, $218. I'm going for 3.
And by the way,
$300.
The last time Corbin Burnes missed the start was the year he ended up winning the Cy Young, and he missed 4 or 5. And the 167 innings, the Zach Wheeler thing. People are going to talk about it forever. But Corbin Burnes has made 97 starts in the last 3 years. 33 starts in Milwaukee in 22, 32 starts for the Brewers in 23, and 32 starts for the Orioles in 24. In those three years, 202 innings pitched, 194 innings pitched, 194 innings pitched, 240 strikeouts, 200 strikeouts, 181 strikeouts, whips at 0.9, 1 flat, and just about 1-1. This guy's stuff he's just dominant, and he doesn't miss games. And obviously, guys are going to get hurt. It happens. But, like, he has been the model of consistency over the last couple of years amongst starting pitchers. And you talk about guys that just take the ball every 5th day. To pair it with the stuff that he's got and to pair it with the numbers that he's got, this guy should make a ton of money.
Yeah. And then lastly, did see some other trades and news. Whoa, there's a mess up. That's bad.
You're really trying to take the
Trades
Jamie role today.
And news together, did you know makes news? Apparently, in my brain, it does. Well, for those of us that are our friends that are tuned in across our TV platforms on Roku and various, we appreciate you. Hate to leave you on that note, but appreciate you so much.
I was going to give you a little whiteboard to say thanks, TV.
Yes, thank
There's
you to
nothing
our
on the
diehards.
whiteboard, though, right now.
Thank you, TV, as John would say. Thank you to our diehards that are tuning in across our TV platforms and hear more about trades, news, and no nudes with us at allphly.com for some final updates as we put a bow on today's episode, because I've got some weird slip-ups today in words. I think it's the weather. It's like making me unable to speak, apparently. But the Guardians and Blue Jays did have a deal of their own. There's a 4-player trade that happened between them. So second baseman Andres Gimenez is headed to Toronto, and the Jays get Gimenez and reliever Nick Sandlin for infielder Spencer Horwitz and outfield prospect Nick Mitchell. There's no cash involved, but it is an opportunity for the Jays who are now going to take on the final 5 years of Gimenez's contract. And so that trade happened. That actually was, some have reported, the first surprising trade. The first out of nowhere trade, because it wasn't really expected that we would get that trade and during the winter meetings, but makes me wonder if we're going to start to see a couple more trades that happen as a result of that. So yeah, it does. It was interesting. It was news. There's some news.
Kind of an intriguing deal, because I think, you take a look at the guy 2 years ago, hit nearly 300, had an OBP at 371. He had an excellent 2022. And his offensive numbers have kind of slipped backwards over the last 2 seasons. Barrel rates aren't high, hard hit percentage not high. Talk about bat speed, right? Another guy who doesn't have a particularly quick bat. But this guy doesn't walk a lot. Like, his OBP last year was 298 with hitting 252. What's Andres Gimenez's value? It's no question. It's the glove. Mm-hmm. He to me is one of the 3 best defenders in baseball. Last year he won the American League Platinum Glove. This year he could have theoretically done it again. Cal Raleigh won it, deserved, but Gimenez is an elite defender, had a 21 range value last year, a 21 outs above replacement value last year. Just an excellent defender, and I don't think that's going to go anywhere. What does his offense play like, for the next couple of years in this contract? Because he is set to make some sizable money, especially for a Cleveland team that's proven they don't like to spend a whole lot of money. What is his offensive productivity going to look like over the next couple of years? I think on the surface, I saw this move and I went, wait, what? You just made a playoff run, and he was a pretty big part of it, and his defense is elite. Like, why would you do this? And then you look at the percentile rankings and his numbers kind of trending in the wrong direction offensively. Does he kind of get back to what he did in 2022, or is he going to continue to slip and become a one tool player? Well, not a one tool player. The guy flies. He's probably like a 2-tool player. But is he kind of a one-sided player where it's just defense all the time and the offensive productivity slips? I value a guy who can play their position at that level.
Yeah. I
don't know how much. Like, at what point do you say, even if you value a guy like Gimenez infinitely defensively, where's the slope, like the y-axis? Where does it cut off with the offensive, productivity or lack thereof?
For sure. Fun fact, if you say news 5 times fast, it does actually. I was like, this is where my head was going while you were talking about that. I was like saying it, news. If you say it 5 times fast, it's really hard. It's a thing. Okay, so final thing I want to actually leave you guys with, because let's end on a high note, right? We're not doing our trivia today. Don't worry, we'll be getting back to that soon. But some positive updates for you that we do have to leave things on a positivity note of updates is the fact that we did hear from Astros GM Dana Brown that on Monday that Houston is open to trading anyone, including Kyle Tucker. And they're saying if it means improving the roster, I think everyone, you would listen on all the players, as Brown said. I don't think you would turn a deaf ear to any of these guys. So there have been some teams actively interested in Kyle Tucker, the Yankees being one of them. John Morosi also said the Cubs are a team that likes Kyle Tucker, and the Phillies were included as not only liking Kyle Tucker, but allegedly are among the teams that at least inquired and tried to find a package that would work with the Astros. There's been an inquiry made. There's been a package that's been considered. Kyle Tucker is expected, as he's going to be He's 27 and has a birthday coming up in the next month. He is someone that is expected in free agency after the 2025 season to get a big payout of around $300 to $400 million, especially with the price points that we've been seeing and how numbers across the league are continuing to increase in terms of salaries. And so Kyle Tucker is one that the Phillies have inquired about. Did play 78 games last season. Had a 289 batting average, 49 home runs, 56 RBIs. We've talked so much about Kyle Tucker as someone that would be a fantastic fit for the Phillies. And knowing that the Phillies at least have inquired about him makes me a little bit excited that there potentially could be a move there that makes sense for the Phillies and the Astros.
I think Kyle Tucker makes sense in just about every lineup in Major League Baseball. Like, if you can go and acquire the guy.
This is also true.
You know, and I know everybody, the only knock on this guy for the Phillies specifically is it's the acquisition of another left-handed bat and a left-handed heavy lineup already.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I know that you would have to counter that with finding another righty somewhere, somehow in the lineup. But when a Kyle Tucker becomes available and you're in the conversation of that, you know, you make the lineup work. You know, you could talk about the return for Kyle Tucker. You know, which pieces are you moving? Is it a Major League ready player? Mm-hmm. Is it multiple prospects? Is it your high-end prospects like an Aiden Miller or a Justin Crawford or a multitude of those guys? You could have that conversation. The one that I think is much easier to have is, well, roster construction means they're pretty left-handed heavy.
Yeah.
I'll figure that part out.
Correct.
Like when a guy of his caliber is available and you're in that conversation, I'll figure the righty-lefty thing out as we go. Getting that kind of productivity in your clubhouse, a guy who hits the ball hard, hits for average, doesn't strike out a lot, doesn't chase a lot, like everything that you're asking for from a player of that kind of caliber, Kyle Tucker fits the bill. Like last year, I know he had that weird phantom injury.
Yes.
Well, I shouldn't say phantom injury. It was a legitimate injury.
It just lasted
but
very
it lasted
long.
forever. But like, if you look at his baseball savant, like it's reds across the board. And for those that haven't been on that website, blue is bad, red is good. He's red across the board, like in everything. In his 270 at bats, he had 23 home runs last year and 270 at bats. He had 29 and 570 the year prior. He's 27 years old. He'll be 28 when this, at some point during the season. This is the type of guy that like you figure out how to make your lineup work by acquiring another lefty.
Make it happen. Kyle Tucker, please. Yes, please. So that will do it for us here today. The Rule 5 draft does happen today, 2 p.m., so shortly after the conclusion of our live show. And for those of you that are tuned in later, across podcast platforms or any other streaming sites that you can catch our show on, 2 o'clock is when the Major League Baseball Rule 5 draft begins.
Yeah, and somebody brought up in the chat, they asked, what do we think the Phillies are going to do in the Rule 5 draft?
What do you think, Tyler?
I don't think they're going to do anything. I don't think they're going to claim anybody. Because here's the thing with the Rule 5, if you claim a player, they have to be on your Major League roster. If you don't want them on your Major League roster, you send them back to the team that left them, unprotected. I will say this, I'd be curious to see if anybody claims Griff McGarry. I don't believe that they will, but I would be interested in that to see if anybody does make a move for him because of the stuff. But I don't think the Phillies are going to do anything tonight.
Yeah, we shall see. Pat Egan did drop an article on our website yesterday talking about a little trip down memory lane and past Rule 5 drafts for the Phillies and how that panned out. So make sure you check that out at allphly.com. Jim Salisbury's also been dropping articles, has had articles every day for the winter meetings and continues to share updates around winter meetings because it's been a very eye-opening time for the Phillies. We're getting updates from the team. We're getting some traction of some rumors of Nolan Arenado, Kyle Tucker, different names they've been connected to. So Jim Salisbury is in Dallas with all the updates for you that you need. So check out his latest. And for us, we'll be back live 11 a.m. again tomorrow. Tyler and I will be here. Jamie will still be on vacation. Come hang with us, and we'll continue to talk about the latest. I anticipate a Corbin Burnes or someone big is going to be off the board today. That's kind of like my gut feeling, Tyler. It does feel like we're going to get some more moves happening over the course of the next 24 hours. So for Tyler Zulli, myself, Renee Washington, thank you so much for tuning in. We'll have Jim Salisbury on the show tomorrow. We'll have more updates on the show tomorrow, and we'll see you all tomorrow for more here on PHLY Phillies podcast. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and we'll see you soon.
We all silly like the mayor.